Assassin's Creed Mirage was heralded as Ubisoft's return to form, a way for them to kind of reset the series and go back to what they were best at, making the Assassin's Creed similar to 1, 2, and 3 that people loved. And a lot of people, myself included, were excited at the potential there. But in practice, it's not quite a full return to form. At least, not if a full return to form is making games the way they used to be. Personally, I do think Assassin's Creed Mirage has improved a lot over Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Odyssey, and even Origins. But it's definitely not there yet, and the greater emphasis on stealth gameplay has certainly introduced, or I guess brought to light, a lot of the glaring flaws in Ubisoft's AI and level design that have probably been in the games since around Assassin's Creed 3 and just weren't addressed because recent titles didn't rely on those elements nearly as much. And so today, I'm going to go through Assassin's Creed Mirage, share some of my experiences with the game, talk about the gameplay and mechanics, and then wrap everything up with what I'd like to see from the next Assassin's Creed title, along with my recommendation in terms of if you should buy the game or not. And if you enjoy video game reviews, guides, or just hearing my thoughts on various topics, do be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there, and for now, let's get into things. So first up, let's meet our assassin. In the beginning of the game, you're introduced to Basim, a man who is haunted by a monster within his dreams. And I'm going to be honest, he's pretty darn unlikable at the start. Arrogant, full of himself, and honestly not that capable. So of course, he begins by following Nehal, sneaking into the Winter Palace, to steal and therefore discover the secrets of an ancient artifact. What could go wrong? To begin with, you're given two options. You can either follow Nehal's lead, or find your own path throughout the palace. I decided to follow her lead, since I needed a little bit of a refresher on Assassin's Creed, it's been a couple years, and I decided to take the help. This introduces you to the game's base mechanics, standing in a bush and whistling at guards, knocking people out, all the usual. And remember how I said what could go wrong? This could go wrong.
Basim!
Give me that! No! Do you have any idea what they will do to me?
Please, I am sorry.
This is your fault!
Stop! Please!
You thieving little rat!
No!
Run!
Nihal, wait! Father!
So all of a sudden, the entire city is out for your head, and you need to escape the guards. Thus begins Basim's journey as an assassin, joining a hidden order to fight against another hidden order. The usual stuff. I'm sure there's definitely going to be no ancient aliens in this one. The gameplay is exactly what you would expect from an Assassin's Creed title. You have a light attack and a heavy attack. The light attack is much faster, the heavy attack does more damage but has a significant charge-up time. Enemies also have light attacks and heavy attacks. When they're executing a heavy attack, they turn red. You need to dodge this. When they're using a light attack, they flash yellow, and you can parry these. You can also dodge them, but that tends to be inefficient, and you'll run out of stamina. But really, your main goal is stealth. After all, this is an Assassin's Creed title. And thankfully, in that regard, the stat systems and the RPG level up systems are gone. So assassinations are back to being an insta-kill against all enemies. You do acquire some different gear, your assassin's outfit, your weapon, and your dagger, but the bonuses are very minor. This is not a stat-focused game, to the point where I pretty much wore the same stuff I got in the beginning, all the way through to the end of the game, and I never felt like I was behind the curve with anything. In addition to your sword, your dagger, and your hidden blade, you also have the assassin's toolkit. For example, throwing knives. These are quite handy, and, with the right enhancements, can be charged up to be absolute nukes. If you thought the bow in previous games was overpowered, no, the bow was not overpowered. Throwing knives are overpowered. They have massive range, they can insta-kill enemies when they're headshot, and can even be configured to pierce armor. I kind of felt like I was cheating by using them, but they're also really fun, so I used them a lot. Furthermore, if you happen to get spotted and don't want to fight the enemies, just drop a smoke bomb. It won't completely clear you out from vision, but it will stun every enemy caught within the smoke, allowing you to easily assassinate them and slip away in the chaos. Or if you're going for that non-lethal route, then try something like sleep darts. There are a couple of other tools in the Assassin's Kit, though I didn't end up unlocking or using them very much, and yes, you can do things like make sleep darts lethal or turn them into berserk, but in general, I liked having the non-lethal option, so that's what I did for most of my playthrough. You'll be upgrading and acquiring all of your tools at the Assassin's Bureaus, which are located throughout the city of Baghdad. And like the tools, your skills have also undergone an overhaul. And in that regard, they are much less impactful. The only one that felt sincerely game-breaking was being able to fully upgrade your stealth so that enemies are automatically highlighted. If you can highlight all the guards, well, then it's almost impossible to get caught by accident. I say by accident because sometimes it was just easier to get caught, toss down a smoke bomb, and assassinate everyone with a multi-assassination, or use the really cool in theory, but not quite as cool in practice Assassin's Focus skill. When you activate Assassin's Focus, you enter Assassin mode and automatically kill enemies who are unaware of you. This is really awesome in theory. There's a time stop and some weird jittery animations. In practice, watching it kind of came off like watching the kid in class Naruto running, where it was weird and cringy and not nearly as cool as it was supposed to be, because there's this jitter and then you'd appear behind someone and stab them, and then the screen would tear and you'd do it again. And it felt less like watching an assassin do his work and more like watching a glitchy video game. But hey, in terms of gameplay, it was really effective at taking out large groups of enemies, so that's cool. So in terms of gears, tools, and skills, it very much felt like a welcome return to form. It didn't iterate on the formula too much, but that's okay. I could see returning to form in one game and iterating in the next. Unfortunately, the parkour points are quite awkward. There were a lot of times where I just kind of fell into a group of enemies or was seen, not because I actually made a mistake as a player, but because I couldn't get Basim to do what I wanted. He'd kind of get stuck and waffle on a ledge when I wanted him to smoothly jump down into the bushes, or sometimes he'd just fall instead of jumping. There were all sorts of weird and awkward interactions with the parkour points. I really wish it was something a lot smoother, where instead of just specific points in the game, you could just grab and run at everything, and didn't get stuck with ledges in that will they, won't they, where your character wants to both go over the edge and also sit on the edge, doing the creepy brooding assassin thing. But even when I got caught, it wasn't a big deal, because for the most part, enemy AI was not great and easily abused. A lot of the time, all you'd have to do is quickly drop out of sight. They'd have no way to find you, throw a couple of throwing knives, take out the leads, and then go around assassinating everyone as usual. If they could see you, the enemies were reasonably smart at traversing things and catching up. If they couldn't see you, they were absolute idiots and completely incompetent. You could kill a guy, and then his friend would look in the complete wrong direction going, hey, where's the assassin? Hey guys, where's the assassin? It was honestly a little bit disappointing to watch. Now, I'm not saying every enemy within 50 miles should be instantly aware of you and auto-lock to your head. That wouldn't be a super fun experience either. But it feels like there has to be a middle ground, where sometimes I just walked into a group of enemies and tossed down a smoke bomb to kill them, cause whistling to get one to come over into the bush wasn't working. The guy was just not interested, or he didn't seem to notice the whistle. And then I'd go on and do it to a second enemy, and at the exact same distance, he'd come over no problem. It really felt to me like, for the past few games, Ubisoft has been so caught up in their action combat that they neglected all the stealth systems and the enemy AI as a result. So I really hope for future games they focus in on this and make it better. But speaking of things that are better, the game was quite free of bloat. Even the side missions didn't feel that bad, and there weren't too many of them. But you could also follow the mainline story and complete the game in 20 to 30 hours depending on if you took your time or just really objective rushed. Honestly, if you're just objective rushing, I could see you doing it in a little less, assuming perfect play, or maybe you just get a little ballsier than I was and not spend as much time sneaking around. In addition to combat mechanics, there are a few out-of-combat mechanics as well. For example, pickpocketing, which I guess it doesn't go against the Assassin's Creed to relieve random innocent civilians of their valuables. You just can't hurt them in the process. So you'll be using this a lot. It's your main source of money and also your main source of power tokens. Power tokens are used A, as part of story events to bribe certain characters, and then B, to trigger events in the world. For example, you could use a warrior's token to hire a bunch of guys that go beat up the local guards, and by beat up, I of course mean murder, because that's how these games work. Going into it, I expected the power token system to be really cool, because they're introduced as this super impactful thing. And unfortunately, they weren't. In practice, you didn't think about them 90% of the time. The most common thing I used them for was to clear all of my notoriety. Because if a civilian sees you committing a crime, that's notoriety. If you complete certain events where the entire city is on high alert, that's notoriety. Notoriety at level 1, the guards are looking for you. Notoriety level 2, the guards know your face and they're ready to kill on sight, plus there's archers on the roof. Then notoriety level 3, basically they break out the assassin hunters. I only got to notoriety level 3 once and didn't actually see any assassin hunters though, so I'm not sure if this was actually in the game or if I just triggered a bug or if I got lucky and cleared my notoriety before they ended up finding me. Either way, it was a little bit weird. I was kind of hoping the city would in some way remember, or I'd have to be careful about my actions. I guess I was to an extent. I didn't just kill everyone in broad daylight. However, you could just sit on a nearby rooftop and throw knives at people's heads and get all of your kills without any notoriety. So overall, the system didn't feel very impactful. And then last up, there is the eagle system. You have eyes in the sky in the form of Enkidu the eagle. He won't be able to see and scout out locations so long as there's an enemy marksman. Luckily, your throwing knives double as marksman eliminators. So I'd quickly go over, toss a knife at someone's head, then scout out the entire area. You can use this to highlight objectives, find alternate methods of entry, or see the guards and, in some cases, their entire patrol path. I kind of went back and forth on if this was a good thing or not, just like with the eagle vision. On the one hand, it was kind of cool to see things and plan out my assassinations, but on the other hand, it felt a little bit like cheating. So use with caution. For some people, I think it's going to ruin the game, and for other people, it's just really fun. I kind of fell in between and used it for some missions, didn't use it for others, depending on how my mood was. But now that I've talked about the gameplay mechanics, what's the story of Assassin's Creed Mirage? Well, you start by following Basim, and also his girlfriend, wife, never really explained, but don't worry about it, not relevant, Nihal. As they go around the city doing minor tasks, you are very quickly introduced to Roshan, the master assassin. And honestly, Roshan was one of the most interesting characters. I kind of wish that she had a more interesting or pivotal role in the midpoint of the story. She's involved a lot at the start and involved a lot at the end, both in really interesting ways. And in the middle, she's just kind of missing, though the middle of the story is also kind of a mess. After the events of the Winter Palace, of course, Basim is devastated. He can't return to the life that he knew, and most of the people that he was with are now dead. So he begins his training as a master assassin and finds a new family. From there, you return to Baghdad and execute missions for the Hidden Ones. I felt like with Basim's introduction, and with just how unlikable his character was, the game took a little bit of time to get going. But after it did, things got interesting. And unfortunately, right as they're getting interesting, when you would return to the city, is right when it fell apart again. Because it becomes very episodic, and I think this is a flaw of the open world format for the game, where the open world gameplay is taking precedence over delivering a story in, I don't even know if it had to be a linear manner, but at least a manner that makes sense. Because having these episodic stories more or less means that, number one, there's a cast of random characters who enter, they're involved for a couple things here and there, and then they exit. With the only characters who were very consistent being Basim himself, the master assassin Roshan, one of his mentors Fulad, and of course Nihal. But as for everyone else, it was really hard to get to know them well enough to actually care about their stories. There are some characters who, at pivotal points, were killed, and I'm sure you were supposed to care, but because the character hadn't been someone I was thinking about for the last 10 hours, just by how I happened to do the story, I didn't care nearly as much. It just felt very disconnected and disjointed. The other thing that felt very disconnected and disjointed is Basim's personal character growth. He definitely does grow as a person, especially over the course of the later missions, but he doesn't change in the early ones because that would mess with the open world storytelling. And so in some ways, your actions feel kind of fruitless, where you're dealing with the same annoying person that you had at the start, fairly close to the end. And again, this could just be because of the way I did things. It felt to me like the first story mission I did was actually the one where he grew the most, and then he lost that growth going into the second one, and didn't really change at all going into the third, only to after going into the third major mission, as the story was starting to wrap up, all of a sudden there's a ton of character growth that tracked with events earlier but not current events. In short, it was weird and annoying, and hopefully there's slightly more linear storytelling in the future. Because the story does leave you with a lot of questions. Who is Nehal, and why does she keep appearing? Who is Roshan, and why isn't she telling us everything she knows? And why is it that a djinn appears whenever Basim kills someone? Why is it that a djinn appears whenever he sleeps? It does answer all of these things, and for the sake of avoiding spoilers, I won't tell you more now. But let's just say there are certain narrative elements which seemed jarring and out of place when I first encountered them. Again, I think because of a disjointed storytelling that made a lot more sense by the end, and I actually enjoyed looking back on them and saw the setup for what it was. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not really going into an Assassin's Creed title for the story writing. Sure, Ezio was great. He was super charismatic and awesome. And Kenway in Assassin's Creed Black Flag certainly had a roguish charm about him. But I can't really tell you much about the backstories or personalities of most of the other assassins. What I can tell you is how much I liked sneaking across rooftops and sticking knives in necks. And so going back to the question from the beginning, is this a return to form for Ubisoft? In a lot of ways, yes. The game's far more stealth-focused and felt down-to-earth with Assassin's Creed roots. In fact, the way that the city of Baghdad was built, a much smaller scope and much less filler, made it feel far more immersive and atmospheric. I really liked hearing the chatter as I was going through, seeing the people walking the streets, at least when I wasn't brushing past them or robbing them with the pickpocket feature. There's no level, no focus on RPG mechanics, no checking stats and comparing things, and I liked all of that. I also think the inclusion of Arabic did help to set the mood very well. Unfortunately, having it mixed in with the English voice acting felt weird and jarring. To the point where I actually think it would have been better for the game to just be in Arabic with English subtitles. And have everyone speak their native language, maybe even need a translator if you're talking to someone who doesn't speak the local language. All sorts of stuff like that would have been cool and interesting gameplay mechanics, and would have more than made up for the fact that you weren't hearing English voices when you were playing things out acting as the characters. I also think that unfortunately, the return to stealth caused a lot of the game's flaws to rise to the surface. It's certainly a solid entry into the Assassin's Creed franchise, but I wouldn't drop everything and rush out to play it. Pick it up if you're bored, or more likely, wait for a sale, and also, for the love of all that is good, Ubisoft, don't make me buy the game through Epic, to then install your stupid Ubisoft Connect to launch the game, and then also try to sell me random crappy cosmetics in your $50 game. If you really want a return to form, cut the microtransaction crap, and also just let me play it as a normal video game without a bunch of always online nonsense that doesn't need to be there. There's no advantage or point to the online functionality. Or if you're going to have the advantage of the online functionality, I don't know, let me save scores and compete with my friends. See if I can do a mission undetected and then brag, or anything like that. Add a leaderboard. Just something to make it feel actually worth it. And so for me, Assassin's Creed Mirage is kind of the James Cameron's Avatar of video games, where it's fun and all while you watch it, but after you finish, you're probably going to be forgetting it. The flaws were annoying at times, but not so much that I ever felt like I was going to put the game down. And the combat was fun, but not so much that I'm excited to play the next one. It was fine, and I'll probably play the next Assassin's Creed after picking it up on sale, unless they showcase significant changes and overhauls to how the enemy AI works. I'm sure I'll enjoy it even, but it's not something to get excited for. And I'd certainly like the next entry into the Assassin's Creed series to be a bit more exciting. But what about you? What have your experiences been with Assassin's Creed Mirage? Did you enjoy the game? Were you on the fence about buying it? Or are you waiting for that sale to pick it up? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Now, if you're looking for something else to watch, another game that I played recently, Armored Core 6, is one I can absolutely recommend even at full price. I ended up beating the game 3 times to find all the endings just because I enjoyed it so much. And even if you don't like the story, the gameplay is a literal blast and a figurative one as well. It's everything that From Software does well, and one of the best mech shooters there is. So if you want to know more about Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, check out my review up in the card and down below. Now, before I go, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. And for about $5 a month, you can see your name featured on screen right now, just like these fine folks here. Link to support is down below. But with that said, I hope you enjoyed the review. Let me know what you want to see in the future. Don't forget to leave a like if you liked it, and I'll see you again sometime soon.